So a little bit about what we are, what we do, and what we are first. We're PureFacts Financial Solutions. We're a small ISV that produces a best-in-class, mission-critical software for wealth managers. We are located in Toronto, in the heart of the financial district on Bay Street. Now, the guy on the keynote stole my thunder a little bit because I was going to throw out an impressive number here. We manage $250 billion on our platform. We deliver our client to about 50, we deliver our software to about 50 clients, and as of last week, we actually managed that amount of money, which is a pretty impressive number. Now, the guy in the keynote threw out 1.2 trillion, so I get a little bit of app envy going on, but hey, it is what it is. What makes me qualified to be up here and speaking to you? Well, believe it or not, I got 35 plus years of software development experience. I may not look it, but I started very young. I developed my first piece of commercial software at the age of 14. I got an MBA, an honors BSc in computer science, and currently pursuing my CFA. I got experience across multiple industries in that 35 years. Life sciences, entertainment, sports, retail banking, insurance, and wealth management, and numerous technology stacks. You name it, I've probably done it. I started my career in COBOL 2, believe it or not. And I remember being a sysop back in high school, and I was booting a PDP 11, if anybody knows what that is, from punch tape, believe it or not. Some of the highlights, I've worked on the 96 Olympics, the architect of one of their systems, the only system that actually worked. Progressive Insurance, I helped launch their DIY, their do-it-yourself website. It started winning awards almost immediately, and then won awards for almost 10 years. I was very much involved in that. Worked in New York a bunch of times, on Wall Street, which is actually really, really cool. If you can land that gig, especially if they're paying your ticket. New York's really expensive. So if you can get them to put you up, that's an awesome gig to get. A little bit about the suite. We have this piece of software called Pure Wealth, and it's delivered as a suite. There's 9 modules in that suite. I only have 8 listed here. Going down the suite quickly, we have Pure Wealth, which is the entire suite, and it's also a name we use for our CRM Lite application. Pure Fees, you can think of fees for wealth management as banking fee, but for your trading account. So we calculate those. Statements, so it's kind of like a banking statement, but for your trading account. Pure Performance, so we calculate your performance, either money-weighted or time-weighted performance. Pure Reports is a reporting solution we deliver. Trades is a lightweight trade management platform. Pure Confirms is when you submit a trade, you buy 100 shares of IBM. Legislative requirement is to have a trade confirmation sent out. We produce those. Pure Portal is a piece of software used by our clients, so they can log into the platform, check their holdings, check their transactions, and so on. And then one not listed here is Pure Admin. Now, the suite itself was designed from the ground up, designed about 6 years ago, believe it or not, 6, 7 years ago. And it was designed to do all these cool capabilities you see on the right-hand side. So it's multi-tenant now, but what that means is I can actually run more than one client in the same application, the same database, all right? SaaS-enabled, which is slightly different than multi-tenant. And I use the term SaaS-enabled because my business guys aren't quite ready yet for me to take this thing to the cloud. So it is enabled, it's ready to rock and roll. I would personally turn it on tomorrow if they'd let me, but they're all worried about the legalities and stuff. Multilingual, absolutely everything in the application is multilingual. We use language files, you just plug them in, you've probably seen that before. The main topic of today is role-based. So the entire suite is role-based, and we'll get to more to that later. It is white-labeled, what basically means we can put a whole new skin on it. Different styles, different buttons, different labels, different colors, different images, and so on. The suite itself also supports client customizations, which is the second part of the main part of this, what this presentation is. And so it supports client customizations. And when I say client customizations, I mean at every single layer in the application. It also does Salesforce and dynamic integrations. Now, if we go back to client customizations quickly, client customizations is via configuration. So it is one of the reasons why my boss won't let me take it to the cloud and do it SaaS enabled, is that the client customization is essentially a bunch of us developers working on the delivery team, customizing it through configuration files. That doesn't really work for the cloud or actually SaaS, because you really want your end users to be able to customize it themselves. So it is currently customized by the developer and working very, very hard to make it so that the end user can do it for themselves. All right. Now the suite itself, single code base, single architecture. We have 9 modules which we can deliver as point products, but they all share the same architecture. Or we can deliver them as a unified suite. The application, I honestly don't know if 15,000 classes is big or not. I keep saying it's big. Some people look at me and they kind of give me that raised eyebrow. I don't know if they're saying that's not big or you're crazy, why do you have so many classes? But it's 15,000 classes, which is evenly split between the UI and the back end. All right? So when I say classes, I actually mean a JavaScript class, a JS file, or a C# file. We are ASP.NET, by the way. We use Ext Direct for communications from the browser back to the app tier, although it is highly customized. And the reason why it's highly customized is that we use Spring Framework on the back end. So Ext Direct does not support an IOC DI container directly. So we customized the hell out of this thing so that it understood what Spring objects were. Again, we're .NET, so we're using the .NET port of the Spring Framework. That code's actually been committed back to the community. You can probably find that post back in 2009 or 2010 timeframe. We have extensive use of common components. That helps with a nice desirable UX pattern at the UI, because every component behaves the same, common transitions and so on. And it also helps with QA. We only write the component once, we only have to test the component once, we get to reuse it, which is great. And everything, and when I'm going to stress this, everything in the application layer is configuration based. So I can configure anything, database up to the UI via a configuration file, which is important because we are an ISV. So we deliver this software typically on-prem to our clients, and we need to be able to support customizations. All right. Going to give you a quick look at the actual suite itself. These are just screenshots. I'm going to just flip over to the browser here. So this is, let's log out. Now this is running over my phone, which is tethered to my computer, so the experience is not so great. The speed is a little bit slower than I'd like, but hey, it is what it is. So this is our main login screen. This happens to be running out in the cloud right now. This is strictly what you'd call a lift and shift strategy. So we literally take what we've delivered, put it up on the cloud. Very compelling story as unto itself from a cost perspective and time perspective. So this is running out in the cloud, and this is our suite. As you can see, here's the 9 modules. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, I'm missing one. Whoa. All right, it's in there. It's buried in there somewhere. So essentially, Pure Contacts again is our lightweight CRM. Pure Fees is our fee module. All right. Navigate around a little bit. See some of the details here. So here represents what be a fee group, navigate through some of the details, the fee history, the accounts over here, blah, 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 blah. Unless you understand the business domain, this probably isn't going to make a hell of a lot of sense. All right. And we, of course, have our admin module. So looking at this application, flip quickly back to the presentation.
So this is not Essentia app?
That is absolutely Essentia app. That entire thing was built in Essentia. All right, just the front end, of course. So looking at this application, it is fairly big. Again, is 15,000 big? Or 7,000 UI classes? Is that big? Anyone? All right. So one of the things we found is we do not do dynamic class loading. All right, nor do we use essential command. Essential command is really about our customizations and the role-based UI, but dynamic class loading will not work for an application of this size. All right, and there's a couple reasons why, but essentially we make a single request. And I'll explain to you why the dynamic class loading doesn't work in a bit. So essentially, when we want to build that application you just saw, we make a single request. We send the request down to the app tier. It matches on page name. So the page I just showed you was pure fees main. Right here. This little page right here, that's the name of the page. And what it does is it matches on this page name and starts reading through this manifest. What this manifest represents is the entire list of JavaScript files that we need to build that page. And it basically just takes these JavaScript files and starts concatenating them into one big fat file. And then we serve up that entire file as a single application to the browser. And then it starts building up the page. Now, there's a number of reasons why we did this. Is anybody here from Citrix? Good. I don't know what brainchild built that demon spawn piece of software, but the first time I saw it, I dropped a big WTF on the ground in front of my team and said, what the hell's going on? Why would anybody want to use this? And the reason why is because it essentially controls your desktop. And controlling your desktop basically means I get a brand new fresh browser instance and an empty cache every single time one of my users uses our application. Now, why is that good? Well, in a bank, you have 20, 30, 40,000 employees. Imagine the chaos that would happen if you had these 40,000 employees all installing and doing these extensions and all this cool stuff on the desktop. Imagine the chaos that would ensue if you didn't control the desktop. So they use tools like Citrix to basically lock the desktop down. You can't install anything, you can't do anything special, you can't get any cool stuff, mind you, but it basically allows them to manage 40,000 independent users with a small IT team. Otherwise, it'd just be chaos. So the first time we tried to deliver a bank, ran up against Citrix, and it was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? So that is actually the main reason why we do not use dynamic class loading. Because dynamic class load is very much based on you have a bunch of things cached, and your user experience is actually very nice if it works. So we couldn't do that. We had an empty cache every single time. So the very first time I delivered a bank, turned on my app, my manager is standing behind me, and the app's going chug, 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 chug as it loads up all my files, because it's a big app. And somebody's shaking their head back there. He's nodding vigorously. Yes, you've seen this. So, and Rob's standing behind me, and he pays me. So he goes, what the hell's it doing? He says, I can't ship this. And I kind of go, well, you're right. I guess we can't. So we came up with this little scheme. And that's why we do this. We basically match on the page name, and then literally build a single file that represents the entire app. And then we serve up one single file. And that got around the problem we had with Citrix. All right? Now, in that list that you just saw, obviously, file ordering is important. Normally, this is taken care of by the dynamic class loader. It handles all that stuff for you. So inside those JavaScript files, you have a bunch of dependencies. So you need to make sure that you order that list appropriately. Otherwise, you're going to get JS compile errors. All right? Now, that list, given that we're talking about 7,500 classes, can get very long. So this is a fairly expensive operation that I'm talking about here. Reading a file, opening a file, reading a file, and closing that file, and then concatenating it to another file 7,500 times is actually a fairly expensive operation. So you want to make sure that if you do this, that you take care of a caching scheme. So I only want to build that file once and cache it on the server. Next request, you're going to serve up the same file. Now, caching and cache busting, although they seem related, are actually two different things. Cache busting We do have some clients who don't allow that have little less stringent controls, and we end up with a JavaScript file or application file in the browser cache that is out of date. So you actually need to take care of cache busting. So how we did that is essentially we put a version number at the end of the file name. So when we upgrade our app, we upgrade the version number. The next time a person hits the page, they get the new version. Very simple scheme. All right? It also helps with developer support. Imagine the days where your developer's working away in their UI or their IDE, and you basically disable the ability to hit F5. So they make a change to the JavaScript file. You basically destroy the happiness of your developers easily if you don't take care of them. So we actually have support so that when a developer goes into the IDE, changes the JS file, and they hit F5, we send up the new application file for them. All right, allows them to do quick development. Now, conceptually, we applied the same strategy to not only the JavaScript files, but the CSS files and the language files, and become apparent why in a few minutes. All right. So let's get into the actual meat of the presentation, which is enterprise applications and roles. So when I was putting this thing together, I was sitting there and going, well, I put this thing on the title, enterprise application. What the hell is an enterprise application? So I went out to Wikipedia and I looked it up. And a couple people have some interesting perspectives. Martin Fowler says enterprise applications are complex applications that manage complex data and processes. Other people are chiming in and saying, well, enterprise applications have all the cool abilities. They have to be scalability, robust, reliability, all these other cool stuff. Nobody really mentioned security or roles. So I'm adding that to the definition. And why are roles important? Anyone? You guys are really quiet. That's absolutely right. So if I'm managing $250 billion on this platform, and I unleash this application, and I have an FNG comes in the front door. FNG is fresh new grad, or if you're from the military, you probably know what that stands for. Comes in the front door, and he has access to all this money. What's he going to do? Hopefully not the bad thing, but you want to make sure your application is secure. And that's why roles are important. You lock down portions of your application so that people can't do things that they're not authorized to do. So how did we deliver? And I'm actually going to show this to you right now. So we flip back to my app. We're going to go into Pyramid, and we bring up my trusty user screen. You guys see that? Good. PF-admin. Now, if you've done any enterprise application development and you have a role-based app, you more than likely than not have one of these. All right, your trusty roles and privileges screen. So what it is, basically, this thing is modeled after Windows users and groups. So essentially, a user belongs to a group, and a group can have a number of privileges. You can also override the privileges at the user level. So here we have a tab called Pure Trades. I don't know if you can see it because it's actually, let's cancel this. So in our suite right now, we got our multiple tabs. One of those tabs is Pure Trades. So if your user doesn't have the privilege to use Pure Trades, you really want to be able to do this. From a centralized management console, you want to be able to go into Pure Trades, and we're going to actually disable that guy, like so. Hit save. Now, I do maintain session, unfortunately. I'll be breaking that shortly. So we bring up a fresh browser, so I get a fresh session. I'll log in with pf-admin. And if this works, and it did, woohoo. So Pure Trades disappeared. I shouldn't sound so surprised, I built it. Pure Trades is no longer there. So we have the ability, we have over 470 roles or privileges in our application. So we can actually control a significant amount of what's going on inside each module. So that'd be functions like add new account or add new contact. You may want to lock this down. You don't want all users to be able to add new contacts to the system willy-nilly, so you want to lock that down. We can control a significant portion of this UI. All right. Now, how did we do that? Surprisingly simple. It was actually shockingly simple once I got it. Basically, we check for the existence of the method. So the method we're looking for right here would be this get edit button. Now what that is a reference is not an instance variable, it's actually a reference to a method. If the method exists, then we actually deliver the button to the screen. Voila, done. A lot of empty faces. Wait a minute, something's not making sense. Where's the secret sauce? Secret sauce is right here. So basically what we do is we define the view as a skeleton. And then we have another file, similar to the manifest. We have another file. We basically look up the roles of the user, and you see the role there, fee function, setup, account, add, edit. Surprisingly verbose, but we look up the roles of the user, run down our security manifest, say, hey, he's got this role, and then we add this method to that class. Actually quite simple. So when it comes through here, if you have that role, guess what? You get this method. And that method then draws the button. It's really that simple. It's shockingly simple how, once I actually got this thing to work, it's like, wow. Is Tirth in the room? Where's Tirth? Tirth, when you first saw this, how complex, how mystifying was this? Yeah, but once you got over the hurdle, it's pretty easy, isn't it? Yeah. This is kind of important. Is there any questions on this? Yeah. Aha. This manifest file you see right here is actually in the back end. So we send the request down, say, give me my application file. First thing I do is read through my application manifest. And then the next thing I do is read through my security manifest. And here on the back end, I'm saying, well, if the user has this role, then and only then do I concatenate this little snippet of JavaScript to the file I'm going to ship to the browser.
That's why you're building your file on the fly.
Correct, 100%. They'd actually helped. Citrix, in one way or another, actually helped me get to this solution.
So you're doing this on a component by component basis?
100%. Wow. Yeah. So the components themselves, you're decomposing your components. Your components have to be structured in such a way to support this. Now, I'm very much, my background's actually small talk. I'm very much of the single principle method. Every method's got one thing and one thing only. So our classes are decomposed. You don't see a lot of huge methods in our classes. And that's because just my experience, I like them nice and small, do a single thing. So the method here actually helps with that. So give me the edit button. This method, that's exactly what it does, just gives you the edit button. So you decompose your class a fair amount, but it actually helped with this problem, because then I can actually structure my base class so that it supports this. Now, it decomposes. You end up with a lot of little fragments, but it's actually not as bad as you think, because it surprisingly, once you get used to the pattern, it actually works really, really well. All right?
You got to have something on the back end as well, because this, obviously, when you're going to click to add a user, it's going to send some kind of URL to the back end.
100%.
So you could basically hack the URL and get through add a user without the client application.
Well, if you go back to 250 billion, I'm very, very security aware, right? So I'm not going to ship an app that you can just literally put a piece of JavaScript in the address bar and rock and roll, right? So I don't do that. You're absolutely right. The same role you see right here, we actually secure the methods, saying you must have that role to be able to execute that method, all right? So yes, 100%. You cannot just handle one side. You have to handle both sides of the equation, all right? Luckily, we are using Spring, And I actually only had to write a couple classes to make this happen using AOP. If you don't know what AOP is, it's awesome. All right?
Clarify real quick.
Yeah.
What you're listing as a role there almost is more to me what I call a privilege.
Well,
Is that a group of privileges?
you're right. You're 100% correct. It is actually a privilege. All right? They tend to be used interchangeably, and this was written about 7 years ago. So I would actually probably go back, knowing what I know now, I'd probably do it again and use the right terminology, because using the wrong terminology really confuses the shit out of people. But it is what it is, right?
If someone doesn't have the role and they don't get the button, do you see layout issues then?
Nope. Surprisingly, you don't. You do have to structure your UI appropriately to be able to handle the fact that things disappear and reappear and can be shifted around. We have a fantastic UX developer and our designer. She's actually sitting 2 rows behind you. She handles all this for us. All right. So she makes it so it's easy.
So you're not disabling components, you're making them disappear every time.
We're actually removing them. Yes, entirely. They're not disabled.
Never see.
That's correct. We never ship that code to the browser. And there's actually, I personally think it's actually more secure than using a data-driven approach. A data-driven approach is you send some data to the UI responds dynamically. I personally hate that approach. I think it's ultimately unsecure because anybody can jump on that request, send back different data, and you get a different UI. Now, ideally, you've secured your back end, but it's a principle of least inclusion. Are there any security people in the room? Okay, well, security people, it's called an attack vector. And you want to minimize your attack vector. Minimize the areas or the ways people can get at your app. So if we never ship that code to them, they never know about it. And therefore, they don't know how to attack me. Now, it's not foolproof, of course. All right? Yes?
If you're serving the app with one file, how do you put those snippets in and put the snippets out?
We literally read file and concatenate. So when I read the security manifest, I just continue concatenating to the end of the file.
So do you have a different file for each role?
No. I can show you that to you, actually. What am I doing for time? 20 minutes? Sure, I can show you that to you right now. So if we bring up our app, I'm going to flip into dev mode right now. And again, this is all ASP.NET. So if we jump over to the web. All right. So this represents our files. So if you look at Pure Fees main, all right, basically what we've done, we just take our file and we just start at the top and start concatenating everything together. And at the very bottom, you'll see all of my overrides. So essentially, I've taken my manifest, bundle them all together, and then I read through my security manifest, bundle them all together at the end. Surprisingly, it works. It works like a charm. Been doing this since version 3. It's changed a little bit in 6, but you can actually see the pattern and how it works. And it's very, very simple. All right. Now, where was I? Okay. So if you've gotten this far without getting lost, how do you think I support client customizations? Well, this override feature and the ability to generate my application file on the fly for a single request was a precursor to me being able to support client customizations. So let me flip back sorry. Is actually a precursor to me being able to support client customizations. So client customizations is actually easy. We leveraged the concept of the application file, and we pushed it just a step further. So we extended the paradigm we use for roles, and we say, well, what if I want to deliver a client customization? How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to deliver a client-specific JavaScript file, and I deliver it into my application, my big fat application file. And that's how we did that, was actually parameterized how I select which file to put into the actual big file. So my manifest is now parameterized. You look at the manifest. Here's an example of a manifest. So we have our our base or core level class grouped by breakdowns, which essentially is controls what goes into one of our drop downs. And then right here, we parameterized one of the strings. So what it does is when I go down the list of the application manifest, I read this line and I recognize, wait a minute, I got to replace something here. And I replace that with the client name. So if I have a file in that path for the client name, I also append it to my application file. And I'm going to show you an example of this right here. So here I have a client-specific override. And it's very similar to what you see for the securities or the roles. So basically, you override the superclass and you change something slightly right there. And then you can deliver a client-specific file. And it's the same pattern as the other two problems. It's actually it actually worked really, really well. And I'm actually going to show this to you just to prove to you it works. Because if you're like me, you trust but verify. So here I have my base application. We look at a contact. And we're going to look at the performance. Now I think there's actually a bug in here. No, it worked. Woohoo. Performance. There's my list. There's the default implementation of this drop down. All right, now if I switch over to my other client, which has subsequently timed out. 1 second. Maybe my VPN, sorry. Yeah, it was my VPN. Oh, no, there we go. All right, hopefully that comes up. Hopefully it comes up. Give it a second here. Yeah, it came up. Nice. Okay. Now this is running over my phone, over the VPN, to a database located in Toronto. So it's a little bit slower than I would actually like. But ideally, we won't have to show this once. Wow. Okay. Well, unless that comes back, you're just going to have to trust me. Well, it came back, figures. You can see the obvious speed difference between this and the other one. Let me now bring up the performance, and you can see right there how the list is different. It's the same list, but this client here doesn't have the performance with certain attributes enabled. So we had to disable the ability to filter on that. This client here, the default client, why is it refreshing? Oh, the default client does. So you can see there's different attributes here. And that's controlled through this file here. So we literally just changed the configuration. We would put more items in the object picker. We called it super object picker. I'm not sure why, but so we actually changed it. I don't show the entire class there. Now, it's important when you're doing this type of overrides. You want to make sure you're only overriding the things that need to be overridden. Now, I know that's a little recursive, but most of the FNGs, the fresh new grads that get out of school, and they override the entire class. That's really, really bad because guess what? If you got a bug in the base class and you overrid the entire thing, you probably just inherited that same bug. It's really bad. So we want to keep your overrides as small as possible. The other thing about client customizations is if you're an ISV and you deliver a piece of software and you customize it, and you're pricing a project for that customization, and you say the customization is going to take an hour. What's the cost of that customization to your organization? It's not an hour. It's an hour plus however long you need to maintain that over the life cycle of the project for that client. And the reason why is because every time you do an upgrade, you have to make sure that customization works. You have to make sure that customization is tested. So that customization that actually takes hours is probably going to cost your organization 10 over the course of the lifetime of the project. So if it's living in the client for 7 years, guess what? It's going to cost you more than you actually originally asked them to pay for it. So you need to be very careful. Customizations are also really, really tough when you do upgrades. So if you hearken back to the days of the SAP and SIBO projects, the consultancies made a lot of money on those things. But every time they got basically locked in because the upgrades were incredibly expensive and horrendous projects to be involved on. So client customizations are cool in one respect, but you need to be super careful unless you build it into the platform, aka Salesforce, which is actually where I'm going with this thing. It's currently not enabled, but once my boss won't let me deliver SaaS until I get a lot more of the customization features out of the developer's hands into the client's hands. So that's where I'm going. All right. Closing remarks. So, how are we doing for time? Perfect. All right, so we started back in 2009, or 9 years ago. So, what was that? 2007. We started on Ext JS 3. We did an upgrade to EX4. The Sencha team really, really upset me at that point in time because it was essentially a full rewrite. Fine. We learned a lot in 3 and we got much better in 4. We skipped 5. Thank you. We skipped 5 and we went to 6. And the reason why we skipped 5 is we were kind of busy at that point in time and the notice of 6 was very, very quick on the heels of 5. So we just skipped 5 entirely. Now, if you're not using 6, start. 6 is awesome. We had a version of this application, Pure Fees. Right here, Pure Fees. We had a version of this written in 4. We have subsequently rewritten it over the last little while and just delivering it now to clients in 6. Thing got a lot better from a UI perspective in terms of usability and just consistency, but the amount of code we wrote went down by 40%. The MVVM architecture is actually really, really good to work with. And the amount of code we wrote, just from a cost perspective, maintainability perspective, QA perspective, it's awesome that the platform actually allowed it to do that. So if you're not using 6, start using it. It's a huge learning curve, steep. All right, so if you haven't done MVVM before, you're literally going to be scratching your head. But it's actually well worth it. Where is it? Wow, I lost my app.
So you do end up with a different app built for each user role / customer.
Yes. When we build those dynamic files, we literally we concatenate the string, We concatenated all his roles into a string. And I actually showed that, but I'll explain it a little more.
That's how you create your unique name for your app.
Yes. Where is it? Wow. Did I lose it? So this is an MD5 hash right here. What this MD5 hash represents is the unique set of roles concatenated together with the application version, and then we create an MD5 hash. So the same next user comes through, requests this file with the same set of roles, is going to get the same file. We don't rebuild it. All right, and that's what that MD5, that's what that represents. Okay, this contributes to the cache busting and the caching scheme. It allows us to cache the files once we build them. We only build them once, and then we also use this to do our cache busting because the MD5 hash will be different on the next version up because we put the version number in there. We also happen to use that to do the developer support, because developer support, we actually add a timestamp in there as well to even make it even more unique. That's the way the developer can hit F5. All right. Designer. When we delivered our first 3 app, it was built by a bunch of developers, me included, and it looked like a bunch of developers built an app. It was fugly. It was really fugly. Get yourself a good designer, especially if you're in an ISV or delivering this, well, unless you're building apps in your basement for yourselves, cool. You're probably trying to sell this. Get yourself a designer. Get yourself a really good designer. Mine is taken. Stay away from Tina. But I'm actually proud now to go out to a client and try and sell this thing to them. Before, it was very, very functional. It was great, and it did a lot of cool stuff in the back end. But it was actually, it's like, wow, I can't believe I'm trying to sell this thing. It's gross. So it is not gross anymore, or at least I think not. And I'm actually proud to go out and sell this, or try and sell it. So get yourself a designer. You will not be displeased if you spend the money for that. Training. I'm not a Sencha rep. I consider myself a Sencha advocate, but I'm definitely not here to sell Sencha. But do not underestimate the value of training, especially if you're going up to 6. Get yourself some training, spend the bucks, and avoid the hassle of doing it wrong. Because doing it wrong means you have to rewrite it. And rewriting as a developer, I hate writing stuff more than once. And if it's strictly because I didn't spend the bucks to get my training, it's kind of like a kick myself in the ass. So get yourself some training. Professional services, use them. We have been doing Sencha since 2007. We are self-sufficient. We are self-sufficient. We can actually support ourselves. We are that good with the platform. We've been doing it long enough. Now, having said that, I am trying to take this platform to the next level. What am I going to do? I'm going to get Sencha to come in, use their professional services, get them to do an architectural review. I want to make sure that all that stuff I just put in there actually doesn't break any of the patterns. And I want to make sure as I continue to evolve this platform, they're going to come in and tell me if there's any gotchas that I buried in there. Because gotchas are bad, all right? Waste my time, and I'm going to get a few more gray hairs, all right? So spend the money and get the reviews, all right? It's important, especially if you build anything of consequence. If you're building something of this size or even bigger, guess what? You don't want to have to do it again, all right? So spend the money on the professional services. Now, I'm not going to mow Sencha's lawn, but I got some vacation coming up. So if you live in a nice, sunny, warm area, I'm more than happy to come down and talk to you. That's the team, by the way. That's the entire company. We are currently at 42 people, I think. Small company. So the fact that we produced that application with that amount of people, for that number of clients, with that number of modules, I'm actually pretty impressed, if I have to say so myself. Any questions? Oh, by the way, before we start the questions, if you want to review the app, please do so. You can use adjectives like really good speaker, fantastic, fantabulous, all right? And there's my details if you ever want to contact me. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody about this. I'm actually pretty proud of what we've done, and I like to show it off. So, questions? It's hierarchical. Absolutely. It's modeled after the Windows users and groups, which are definitely hierarchical. So you can actually create a group which has a bunch of the associations to the privileges within the hierarchy. You assign a user to the group. It inherits from the group, but you can also override at the user level. Deny always takes precedence. So if anywhere in that hierarchy you hit a deny, it takes precedence, which I'm not 100% sure follows the Windows model exactly, but deny always takes precedence. Any other questions? Here. Door prize. Oh, nice. That's a brain. It's for stress.
Do you run into any issues with tracking, like for example, namespaces and things like that? Make it tougher?
Yeah, we quickly departed from the Sentia advocated way with namespaces. We have a single namespace. We try not to futz around with that. And the reason why is we have a lot of common components. So in my application files, I called it an application manifest. It's actually decomposed into several manifests. One is the Ext JS libraries. It starts first. Then we have our core files, our common components. And then we have our actual module-specific files. Well, if you start futzing around with namespaces, it gets really weird. So we go everything in one namespace, which goes against their pattern, I believe. But hey, it is what it is. We started that back in 3. We never changed it.
Going off on a tangent.
Yep.
Where are you relative from modern toolkit to classic?
Tina. There you go. Here, have a brain. Any other questions? Yeah.
How do you mimic other roles?
How do I mimic what?
Say, for example, if you are a super admin and you want to see how an admin sees it.
Yeah, it's a good question. We tend to have one user in our system that has a defined set of roles that gets shipped with the product, and we don't allow anybody to change those privileges, and he gets essentially everything. Now, surprisingly, we try to keep this thing secure, but as soon as we deliver it to a client, they always end up finding out this user. And they always end up finding out the password, and then they hijack and do everything with it. I really want to lock that down because it causes me endless amounts of grief. But yeah, we try to have one user that's got everything and we can't change him. We call
Say, for example, how you build it. So can you list those files?
how do you build it? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Like, for example, for a particular role, you list those JS files.
Right.
But if I want to see the role of other user,
Yeah.
how do I?
The developer can log in with a different user ID. We have multiple IDs. When we build our system, we build up a whole bunch of users that have multiple privileges. So if you're doing testing and development, you want to test, obviously, with the right privileges.
Okay, so it's like one sign in and you see the user.
Correct. Yes. Bad toss. Yes.
Are your customers able to customize the application?
I'm sorry?
Are your customers able to customize the application?
The customers currently no. Our development team has to do that. And the reason why is all the customizations that we support everywhere throughout the entire stack isn't quite available to the clients yet. I am building that. It's in my head right now. But we're going to be building that. Once we have that available where the clients can do it for themselves, then I can deliver it as a SaaS solution. But not quite there yet. It's a big, big job. Yeah.
So basically, you're serving all your customer from a single server environment.
Correct.
So that's why you need to have customizability in this thing.
Correct. Yeah, right now we normally deliver on-prem, but, sorry. Just a little stress ball, where'd you go? All right. Yes, we deliver all our clients. You have no stress?
No, I don't.
Okay, come on, man. You're in software, buddy. It's a brain, yes, it's a brain. And I saw some of you people last night. You could use a few extra cells. Yeah, we deliver from a single application. We can deliver multiple clients from the same code base. So from the same running instance. We don't currently do that because everybody installs on premise. We just delivered our first client into the cloud. It's a lift and shift, But very shortly, we're going to have multi-tenant, and we're going to be able to run multiple clients from the same running instance. Very, very soon. I expect that to be Q1 next year sometime.
But if you mess up in that config file, some of the other customer will see their stuff on the other customer.
Yes, you are correct. But that's why you do QA. Test the hell out of it. Make sure that doesn't happen. It is a concern, believe me, but it's very compelling. Now, how does Salesforce do it? So it's a paramount concern for Salesforce, right? I don't know, but believe me, I'm going to be pushing my QA team to figure this out for me.
How do you handle the multi-language?
I'm sorry, one at a time.
How do you handle the multi-language?
Language? The concept of the application manifest?
No, like you have the English version, the French version.
Yeah. The concept of the application manifest, we actually extended that to deliver, here's my language file. I can show it to you. This should be quick. So, all right, this guy right here. No, not him. All right. There we go. So when we run down, we basically say, you have to excuse the syntax, a lot of syntactical sugar here because this is all Spring-based, but this property right here says, give me this language file. And part of the language file is this parameter, and basically this parameter 1 means the language. So we replace this with phi-lang-en, and then
Get the file, but how do you override all the components, inner text, like with
yeah, we don't typically worry about the inner text. Yeah, all right, so we're talking about the T function. So we have our infamous T function. So you'll see here, so right here, every time we want to use a piece of text, we do not use the straight text. We use a token. And if we bring up the phi-lang, oops. So here, we have a token, and then this is the actual language that's used. So when we actually want to put a value on a screen, we do not use the language directly. We use the T function, which translates. So it translates that token by doing a lookup into this table.
So if you look at one of such a component and how you apply that text on it, how does it look like?
So if let me show you that. Right here, here's a good example. So the description, when we set the description, we do a translate right there. It's very, very simple. So all we do is literally we change which language file we serve up, and then when we build the app, we translate everything right there.
I mean, one thought, are the users choosing the language themselves, or you just...
We have a hierarchy model that we use. Typically, we default to the browser, and then we allow the user to override it. But it always starts with the browser, because when you log in, you don't know who the hell they are, right? So, but when they log in, they actually say, here's my preferred language. We can switch it. The languages themselves also support the same concept we did before. So if we look here, and I'm about to, yeah, I hear you. So if you go to here, we also support the ability for clients to do the override at the language level. So we actually had clients come to us, say, I don't like the OK button to say OK. I wanted to say submit. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. So yes, we support the overrides. And when I said earlier I do overrides and customizations to any level, I literally meant any level. We can change anything, all via configuration. These are the configuration files. These are what I need to externalize so I can get it SaaS. All right? Sorry, last question, because they're going to kick us out.
All right. I know you touched on it before, but obviously the permission sets and roles are highly configurable by the users.
Yes.
So are you replicating the same
100%. 100%. You cannot secure a front end without securing the back end. You have to. But not exactly the same pattern, because the syntax and the languages themselves are slightly different, but we use the same role name. So you'll see a role name that we use to deliver a JavaScript file is also a role name that we put on an annotation on a method. So there's very much a pair, and they have to work together. And you can run into some weirdness because there's two different languages, right? So it takes a little bit of getting used to. Again, the learning curve is kind of steep, not only on 6, but on the architecture itself. But once you get that pattern working, it's actually very workable. And we secure every method on the back end. All right. All right, guys, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of Vegas and the rest of CenturyCon.